Hello, everybody. Good morning to you, and thanks for joining today's Appeon community webinar. Today's community presentation will focus on how to migrate your existing PowerBuilder apps to the new PowerBuilder 2017. Today's presenter, John Strano, is a senior consultant at Intertech Consulting. So before we begin today, I just want to put up a quick disclaimer and let you know that this is a community presentation and it's a completely volunteer basis. This is not something that Appeon has hired or paid to have done. And so the views that are going to be represented here are that of the author. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Armin, and good day, everybody. Yeah, I guess you could say that I've been around PowerBuilder for a while, starting in with version 10B. Was that around 1991? Yeah, that wasn't the tallest stack of 144 diskettes. I think version 3.1 on that point, but it was getting up there. In addition to being a developer and instructor of PowerBuilder, I've been evangelizing the product internationally since 1997. I'm also a managing consultant with Intertech. Intertech Consulting is the largest and oldest consulting firm in North America, specializing in PowerBuilder, Appeon, and other Sybase related technologies. We were the first company independently certified by both Appeon and Sybase to sell and support the Appeon server product, now called PowerServer. So today's agenda starts off with factors that influence the migration of your PowerBuilder assets. We'll cover the primary points of migration, the key points that you need to consider. I'll cite features that have been discontinued, and we'll cite tools and resources that will assist you with your migration project. We'll then review the migration process, the recipe as it were, then examine some strategies for remediation of found issues. I'll then review a recent migration customer case of Intertech, followed by our Q&A session. Now, the code line of Appeon PowerBuilder 2017 is very close to that of PowerBuilder 12.6. And by that token, immediately upgrading your PowerBuilder application from version 12.6 is a sound decision. Issues moving from 12.6 to 2017 really are negligible. You know, the level of effort to upgrade any PowerBuilder application is influenced by two major factors: the version of PowerBuilder from which the app is being upgraded, and what features your PowerBuilder application utilizes. You know, we did want to underscore some key migration considerations for you. Yes, PowerBuilder 2017 is built on the version 12.6 code line, but in that you can migrate directly to version 2017 directly from very early versions. From PowerBuilder 5 and before. So you need to provide for the possibility of regression bugs. The PFC has been open source and not included with the PowerBuilder installation for quite a few versions now. You can find the PFC libraries at this URL on this slide. The PFC applications should migrate just fine with some caveats that I'll cover in just a few minutes. There are some rich text edit control changes. You also have the native ability to generate PDF documents. You don't need GhostScript anymore to generate PDF documents. We now have a native PDF solution. Now, if you're migrating from a version of PowerBuilder 10.0 or earlier, there are some Unicode accommodations to be made. If you utilize external resources in the form of ODLLs or ActiveX OCXs, their bitness does need to be considered. And of course, you need to be aware of the PowerBuilder features that have been discontinued. Now, the key features that have been discontinued are, in PowerBuilder 2017, EA server projects, they're no longer there. PowerBuilder 11 WinForm projects, PowerBuilder 12 WPF, WCF project, and discontinued from past versions of PowerBuilder is distributed PowerBuilder, object linking and embedding automation server, Com Plus wizards. You can still consume it, but you can't generate it. And then the data window and window ActiveX plugins, JSP projects, and PowerBuilder 11 web form projects. Now, I'd highly recommend that you take advantage of tools and resources available before and, well, frankly, while you conduct your migration project. This should be considered a formally managed project. First is the Migration Assistant tool. Then the migration guide that's available online at this URL. Then peer-to-peer support in the online Appeon community. And the Appeon University Library of Self-Driven Courses videos. These will be foundational PowerBuilder instructional videos, especially if you need to staff up your team and you want to train them up to proficiency from scratch. We hope you like this resource. And then technical support, which is free for regression bugs, even for trial users. Please do take advantage of this. And get a consulting referral from Appeon to augment your team's knowledge base and to expedite the migration project's time frame. So the migration process, the recipe. The zeroth step, I guess you could call it, is of course to back up your pibbles, folks. Can we say this enough? Can we say this too much? Please make sure that you have retained and archived a version of your PowerBuilder libraries. This is a point of no return, migration forward only. And then the subsequent key steps are to verify that you can fulfill the software system requirements. As best practice, you may want to test your application. You'll want to avoid introducing modifications just before migration. If the bug appears, you don't want it empirically buried. You won't know if it's your mods or the migration that's introduced any given issue that is discovered. Run the migration assistant on your previous version pibbles, and then remediate the discontinued features within your previous version of PowerBuilder. This is where you're going to be able to address those the best. And then, yes, migrate your pibbles to PowerBuilder 2017. To repeat, you can migrate directly from very, very early PowerBuilder versions. And then perform a rebuild, a full rebuild of the workspace and the targets to resolve all your references and to avoid corruption. And then ensure that there are no serious regression bugs with a full QA, folks, please. Okay, what we're going to do is to show you the migration assistant and migrating a small PowerBuilder application just to show you what the process is. Let's go over to PowerBuilder 2017. Okay, and here's Windows 10 with the PowerBuilder IDE. And to get to the Migration Assistant, we're going to go to File, New. And in the Tool tab page, note I've selected the Tool tab page, I have the Migration Assistant selected. And here you'll select which categories of stuff to search for that you feel are in your PowerBuilder application. We just recently in Intertech migrated forward a PowerBuilder 5 application that used Funky. For the purposes of this demo, I'm only going to search for new, obsolete, or removed syntax. But yes, you can also pursue that in a custom file. And here's where you can select which versions of PowerBuilder that you want to check for new, obsolete, and removed syntax. I check all of these that apply. In other words, everything that's from your PowerBuilder application and between that and PowerBuilder 2017. So here what I'm going to do is to select the libraries that I want Migration Assistant to search. I'll double click. And this is nothing like a full rebuild, folks. This is really just a reading, searching through these PowerBuilder libraries, even though they are specific targets, separate targets themselves, with their own application objects. We're just going to have the Migration Assistant read through these pibbles. And here's the confirmation page for the wizard, and we'll finish. And we see, in fact, nothing has been found. Now, you have the choice of being able to save to disk, to the file system, and or to print. Folks, I would really highly recommend that you save this to file. This is going to be the kernel, the basis, the foundation of your punch list of issues to address while your PowerBuilder libraries are still in the previous version. Okay, now for the migration itself. What I want to do within PowerBuilder 2017 is File, Open Workspace. I'm going to choose this PowerBuilder 11 workspace. Click Open, and we see that PowerBuilder has detected that this is a version previous to PowerBuilder 2017. And here's the one target file that's applicable to this workspace. Now click OK. And we see in the output pane that it's going through its regeneration processes. It also connected to SQL Anywhere 17 to check data window syntax. And we're done. And here is the default. I would recommend that you do save this output pane for archiving, if not for working references sake. And we see that there was a global variable, a conflict here, and we can go back and address this, perhaps in PowerBuilder 11. But we can also, since there was no true explicit errors found, we could consider that these pivots have been migrated, and we could go in with version 2017 to check on what caused this warning. Okay, very good. Let's go back to the slides. Okay, with the encouragement of June 30th release of Appeon PowerBuilder 2017, enterprises are looking to their mission-critical PowerBuilder assets from two perspectives. Number one, ensuring that their applications are running under a supported version and that their applications are modernized to the point that the mission-critical assets are functionally prepared to move into the future. Maximizing the extensibility of applications, you will want to partition the business logic into NVOs as much as possible. This will enable, deployment as .NET assemblies and web services. It will also increase the scope of deployment to the web and to mobile. It will also enhance the user experience to ergonomically and aesthetically compete with the other applications that your PowerBuilder application sits next to on the desktop. Now, the key new UI features that have been added since PowerBuilder 7 to enhance the user experience are dockable windows, new controls like date picker, edit mask, drop-down calendar, ink and month calendar, contemporary style menus, animated windows in full transparency. Transparency is supported in objects and controls, by the way, and PNG image support will support that transparent channel on that PNG image. And then 3D graph styles and DirectX support. Now, in a recent effort on our part, required us to bring a customer's PowerBuilder 5 PFC-based application to PowerBuilder 2017. The application in question had been developed in turn for one of their aerospace clients. The customer wished to, one, prepare for PowerBuilder's next incarnation by functionally migrating their applications to a version which would be supported by Appeon. And they also additionally want to modernize their users' experience so that their product looked and felt contemporary, running alongside their customers' other applications. Now, this version 5 to version 2017 migration immediately connoted a roster of checkpoints to verify when we're bringing a Windows 95 era application forward. Right, here are the usual suspects, or at least the major ones that you need to review. Unicode versus ANSI string utilization. Remember that this particular case study is on a PowerBuilder 5, a pre-10.0 version PowerBuilder application. Dynamic data exchange, object linking and embedding, OCXs and ActiveXs, and you need to look for external resources and their compatibility moving forward. Yeah, that's just not a comprehensive list, folks. This is just what is the major historic key points that you do need to consider. The additional points are going to be secondary, but idiosyncratic to your applications. But if they're an impediment for you, they're certainly not minor. So make sure that you do pursue them. For instance, I recall in one migration effort that entailed, among other things, We had a need to re-examine and modify an approach for dynamic menu assignment manipulation. I think this was from PowerBuilder 4 to 5, but dynamic menu creation and assignment, there was an issue that we needed to work around. And we'll talk about more of these later, but these tasks, again, it's just an initial roster of the usual suspects. When you approach this caliber of effort for bringing a PowerBuilder 5 generation of application forward, we just wanted to suggest to you what you need to consider. Now, our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application had been developed for and was run under Windows 95. And we needed to upgrade it to PowerBuilder 2017 to be run in Windows 7 64-bit environment. It did predate, as I stated earlier, version 10.0. This also was before the advent when all strings in PowerBuilder were Unicode by default. This required looking into any part of the implementation that assumed any strings to be ANSI and modifying those implementations to accommodate Unicode. Look for anywhere in your code that string length and character position within strings are calculated. Examine all your external function calls for arguments or return values of the string data type. Then anywhere within the method signature, you need to pay special attention to strings passed by reference. And I urge you to take advantage of these online resources with regard to ANSI versus Unicode migration techniques. Our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application, luckily it had negligible ANSI to Unicode migration issues. Issues surrounding the migration of dynamic data exchange are primarily concerned with the version of the DDE partner with which your PowerBuilder app is communicating, and the version of Windows in which the two DDE partners are running. And here's a link to the documentation for DDE utilization. Luckily, silver lining, our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application did not use DDE. The issues surrounding the use of OLE have less to do with the version of Windows in which the applications are running, and it has more to do with the version of your OLE partner application and that version's level of adherence to the OLE specification. Arguably, it was Microsoft that authored this specification, and with each version of Windows and Office, arguably they did not adhere to their own specification, so this does bear examination. And here's the link to the OLE link in the docs. Okay. So our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application did not use OLE per se, with one exception. Our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application did use one ActiveX OCX control to visualize data as graphs. Once this 20-year-old third-party component was discovered in the candidate application, we experienced a certain amount of trepidation. Concurrent with the release of PowerBuilder 5, there was a burgeoning marketplace for controls that were developed utilizing this ActiveX OCX flavor of OLE. This is new technology. PowerBuilder 5 being released in the Windows 95 era had PowerSoft partnering with Tidestone, formerly Visual Components. Remember Visual Components, folks? They had developed best-of-breed controls like Formula One, spreadsheet control, first impression, the graph control. A search online resulted in no sign of Tidestone as an active business entity. There was no sign of any firm that I could find that might have acquired Tidestone's intellectual property, let alone still supported them. Now, our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application did use Tidestone's first impression OCX. Now, our initial concern was almost immediately allayed. You better believe it. We tested for this first. Once the PowerBuilder 5 libraries were successfully migrated to version 2017, the first portion of the application we tested was that, utilizing first impression. It ran successfully. Moreover, the installation package creation utility we used was successfully able to extract the common data from the first impression library and successfully register the component, the control on target Windows 7 64-bit workstations. Since we were compiling the application to 32-bit, not 64, there was no compatibility issue there. We had been prepared to go shopping. Now, let's go back here. I want to comment on this. We thought we would have to spend much time with a drum roll, big fat drum roll playing, as we shopped for a more contemporary graph control equivalent with the accompanying cost of purchase and code modification. As it turned out, thankfully, no code modification to this PowerBuilder 5 application was necessary. Do refer to the application technique doc if this applies to your applications. It's not hard to find the PowerBuilder 5 version of PFC had its 2 platform service NVOs. Remember that platform service, folks? There was one for 16-bit and one for 32-bit. The class that was instantiated was determined at runtime by detecting the variant of the OS environment on which the app was running. There are unpleasant anecdotal accounts of applications that relied upon external functions calling 16-bit DLLs, which would not run under latter-day OSs and for which the source code had been lost. Fairly unpleasant anecdotal evidence out there. Now, our candidate PowerBuilder 5 application did not use any 16-bit resources. The one external resource was 32-bit, and the customer wished to compile to 32-bit, so all was well. Since the candidate PowerBuilder 5 application was PFC-based, we needed to determine whether one PFC layer had been implemented or more. Moreover, was the best practice in constraining any customizations, extensions to the framework and its service-based architecture to one or more of just the PFC layers and prohibited from being placed in the PFC ancestor layer, was this adhered to? For a concise discussion of utilizing the PFE layers versus the PFC layer of the framework, take advantage of Terry Both's entry at this link. Terry is a charter member of Team PowerSoft, Team Sybase, and his site continues to be one of my go-to references, folks. Now, we chose to upgrade the candidate PowerBuilder 5 application with its version 5 PFC and PFE layers left in place. Due to time constraints and budget considerations, we empirically deferred the migration to a 2017 PFC layer, along with its additional requisite QA cycle to a later date. So this did work, it did function, certainly as time and budget allows in the future. This customer will migrate to PFC and PFE layers. Bruce Armstrong is another one of my colleagues from the Team PowerSoft, Team Sybase days. Now he's also an Appeon community MVP. Bruce recently migrated the PowerBuilder Foundation classes to PowerBuilder 2017. However, Bruce found that in the platform service, the values of the window class names need to be modified. They need to use the name of the window classes that PowerBuilder 2017 actually instantiates. Now, if you've ever used the Windows API find window call, you'll know what I'm talking about. In any case, if you're migrating earlier PFC layers, modify the values with which the instance variable string array is initialized. And I've depicted them here. Thank you, Bruce. Oh, another PFC issue that Bruce wants to point out is that the PFC includes a reference to the pbdom extension PBD file. Now, pbdom, that was PowerScript-based XML document manipulation. PowerBuilder 17 throws an error message, then stops the migration. And then you can't go into the older version of PowerBuilder and change the reference to the new PBD name. So this is a catch-22. So what you'll want to do is to go in and, using your favorite text editor, perhaps even the one in PowerBuilder, edit the library list of the target file itself to point to the new pbdom DVD. Now, I want to pass on to you a caveat about a PFC issue I found myself. A TreeView control in our PowerBuilder 5 candidate application made use of the PFC TreeView data store service to associate data with each level of the TreeView control and thereby with each TreeView item. It's intended to have the PFC UTV service and its OF create key method dynamically create a computed field in the runtime data window object in the data store that will be searched later using the find method to look for the row in the data store that is associated with each TreeView control level. Although the modify method call that's meant to create this field named PFC TBI key returns a success code, the field was not actually created. The ramification of this, of course, was that the find method later fails to find the data value of the user selected TreeView item. So a workaround was discovered by statically creating a computed field at design time using the data window painter and naming it PFC TBI key with the same intended expression of string and then the column name, to stringify that column's value. The find function later succeeds. Thanks for bearing with me, folks. PowerPoint froze on me for just a moment. Now, while this workaround, it's cumbersome. However, the candidate application had only one TreeView control in the entire application with only 2 levels, so this workaround did not entail an inordinate level of effort for now. The workaround, it wasn't elegant. It leaves behind a counterintuitive maintenance issue, but the customer is going to be reporting this to engineering so that it is addressed. This may not manifest once they migrate to the version 2017 PFC layer, but we will see, and we will be working with this customer to monitor that progress. All right, and for the most interesting of lab rats, I've found attempting to modify completely leaving the PFC. Well, I want to let you know that if you attempt to make a modify call against the text property value of a text item in a child data window, it abends an application. It crashes. Now, this doesn't happen for all instances, but if it does happen for one data window child, it will happen for that one every time. This happened for an application being migrated from PowerBuilder version 12.5 to 2017. A fairly large project. It had 27 targets, and we were under a very tight schedule. Without completely recreating the data window objects and the window involved from scratch, the workaround I found was to alternatively pass the date value in as a string retrieval argument. I added this to the data window object of the child, and then used that retrieval argument value in an expression for the text item's text property value instead of doing a direct modify call. I then modified the power script to call the retrieve with that new one string argument. Now, this was a recently discovered issue, and we'll submit this to tech support. As a matter of fact, the customer will be doing it at themselves. Now, moving on to the new rich text control. This new implementation it replicates all the key functionality that we've utilized in past versions of rich text. However, it does have enhancements to the version 12.6 features and behaviors. Arguably, this new rich text control implementation, it could be considered to be a non-issue for migration, and that no PowerScript changes should be necessary, but QA. Do open up the PowerBuilder help file to the new features section for a listing of the minor differences between the previous and the new rich text control properties and behaviors. Most users will find that the enhancements of PowerBuilder 2017's rich text control are more than acceptable. If, however, these few limitations in the new RTE are impediments for you and your team, you're able to designate in your application to use the PowerBuilder 12.6 implementation, which is from text control. ActiveX control decided not to support PowerBuilder 2017 with their trial version. Now, if you choose to implement this, you need to make a separate purchase and use their paid version. So let's go back over to PowerBuilder 2017. What I'm going to do is open up the help file. Resize this, and I'll expand to what's new. Here's the section on the new rich text control. And yes, you can browse for what's unsupported, any limitations, differences, but also enhancements. And if in fact you folks determine that for some reason you need to use the PowerBuilder 12.6 implementation, you can go into your application object, go into the additional properties, and choose the Rich Text Edit tab page. So you can choose to either use the 2017 built-in Rich Edit control, or you can choose to use, after separately purchasing it, Text Control's own ActiveX. And then here, yep, this is where you enter the serial number, and that will be passed through PowerBuilder to the control itself. Sorry, I got ahead of myself, folks. All right, so similarly, the new native PDF generation capability does not need to entail any script modifications. Remember, as I said earlier, you do not need Ghostscript any longer. You do have a native PDF generation capability. However, all you do is call the save as method, but note the change of utilizing the native PDF enumerated value. You still use the enumerated value PDF when calling the data window save as method, but you'll need to additionally designate the native PDF data export method in one of two ways. The first is depicted here. You can simply designate it statically for any data window object in the data window pager. Alternatively, you can designate the PDF generation method dynamically at runtime using either dot notation or a modify call. What you see here is the DW syntax tool. Thank you for the nth time to Sandy Barletta for this invaluable tool. So let me go ahead and go back into PowerBuilder. And let me open up any data window object here. Choose another one. Now let me bring up the properties tab page. And we go over to data export. And here, when I choose PDF, now I can statically define this. In PowerBuilder 2017, you now will designate which of these three methods of generating the PDF you will use. And here is native PDF capability. Now this is statically assigning it, let me say that, at design time. Oh, also wanted to point something else out. Let me open this back up. Go back to the data export tab page. And note that it seems like it broke. This is just recapitulating the PowerBuilder 12.6 behavior. There is no default data export format. You'll need to designate that at runtime with your save as call. However, if you then call PDF for save as, this data window object has statically retained the native PDF method for that. Just wanted to point that out. Or alternatively, let me go into File New, and we're back in the Tool tab page, folks. And here I'm going to open up the data window syntax, DW syntax tool. And I'll go into, make sure I'm at modify, attributes, and I'll go into the data windows, export. And here's export PDF method. And here you can utilize the syntax here for a modified call, or if you're a fan of dot notation, you do that alternatively. Thank you, Sandy Barlotta. You'll notice that all the enumerated values that are applicable are cited here. Okay, let's return to our slides. Now, and for the definitive roster, this is it, folks. This is the definitive roster of features that you need to prepare to move forward for PowerBuilder 2017. Please do refer to this online documentation at this URL. It has a version-by-version listing of deprecated features, discontinued features, and other modifications to the product. In the valuable limited time we've had together for this webcast, I thought it most important to give you information that's not readily available via other means. This is this other means. The procedures, nuts and bolts recipe for migrating your targets, your pivots, clearly cited in this online document thanks to the hard work of the documentation team. Hats off to you folks on that team. You're the two often unsung heroes in my book of the PowerBuilder community. Now, in previous slides, I cited certain stuff as non-issues. Well, of course, this was fiction. It's highly recommended that you migrate and fully test your application. Migrate, then QA again. That's our recommendation. Folks, don't enhance your application at the same time as migration. If issues arise, they'll be empirically buried. You won't know if that issue is spawned by migration or your code modifications. Now that your application's been migrated to a supported version, should the business owner need to consider browser enabling the application with Appeon Web or mobilizing it with Appeon Mobile, those capabilities are now available. You can expand the scope of your already valuable assets. Most importantly, by upgrading, your future options for this application and those like it are now preserved. Thank you all.
And thank you, John. It was great to have you today and sharing all this knowledge with us. And we hope that we'll see you in the future on the community site and webinars.
You're welcome, Ami.